Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Keisha Rogers. Hello, good to see you. And looks like we are gathering here, getting a pretty good group of feisty guys. All right. So, what I wanted to do today, if some people may have had a chance to watch yesterday's broadcast of the LaRouche PAC weekly broadcast of the webcast, which I participated in along with my colleagues Benjamin, Denniston, Matt, and Rachel. And one of the things that we launched during that broadcast was the initiative of 2017 being the year of Lyndon LaRouche's ideas. And I think that this is really absolutely necessary that we take what LaRouche has laid out from the standpoint, Lyndon LaRouche, and the 50 years of work that he's done in terms of his intervention into the educational policy needed to understand what a real science of physical economy, economics is, has to be understood as we look at the transformation that's taking place throughout the world right now, where there is a new conception of international relations through economic cooperation and development being defined. And this is what LaRouche has dedicated and committed his life's work to in terms of understanding what is economy, what actually characterizes economy. So that is going to be the basis of my discussion today. Before I get into that more deeply, I want to actually bring up a few very exciting highlights in the fight underway at this present moment, and why it is essential that we take up this new initiative to putting Lyndon LaRouche as at the center of world affairs in terms of the understanding of why when Mr. LaRouche put out his 4 laws, which are urgently needed to save the United States today, there is a universal underlying foundation that goes at the core of those 4 laws that really have to be taken up and understood. And that this is what is actually moving the world at this present moment, when the United States is focused on the wrong complete. I mean, what we're seeing in the United States right now, you're asking, is this for real? Is this some kind of, what do you call it? Some kind of Saturday Night Live spoof? Can we be serious here? I mean, give me a break. When you have the whole world moving toward the greatest potential for the advancement of mankind, cooperation, and economic development, what are we focused on? We're focused on complete insanity. And I want to go to the reason why this insanity is being focused on, because, I mean, first of all, when you look at the fact, you do a comparison and you see the accomplishments that have been brought about through China and what nations around the world, the development going back to 2013, as we've been, in the more recent period of history with the development of the BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that launching off of the development of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, and 60 plus nations defying the rejections of Obama and the British Empire and the failed financial institutions of the transatlantic system not to participate in that. But we're seeing more and more that these nations have said, we don't want to be a part of that collapsing system. We want to be a part of the new paradigm. And so with the United States election that just took place, where the American people said, we want to be a part of that new paradigm. We don't want any more of the last 16 years of murderous, failed economic policies of the Bush-Obama regime. Well, that can't be true. The American people don't know what they want. They don't want, they don't know that they want to be a part of economic progress and development. You know, it had to be something else. You know what? It had to be the Russians hacking our election. They poisoned the American people. They got to their heads, and you know, well, it's not about the fact that Obama, the productive rate of economy has declined tenfold massively under the Obama presidency. There's been, in the course of 2015 to 2016, a rapid rate of the death mortality rates increasing. You know, more people are dying because of drug overdoses. More people are dying because of, you know, the economic collapse, because of the collapse in a real economy, because of the fact that we are not producing anymore. We didn't even make any, as far as Obama and Hillary Clinton, that they try to go to the machine tool sector or to Pennsylvania, to Michigan, to places that were at the core of our nation's real labor force and say, I'm going to do something for you. No, they want to talk about starting war with Russia. They wanted to talk about things that were going to continue to deplete the productivity of the population. And the people, American people, understood that. They didn't need the Russians to tell them that. So this is the insanity that we're seeing right now. And to add insult to injury, when you have, first of all, what is really being understood right now is that the policy that has been dominating this nation, the transatlantic system, cannot be sustained any longer. That policy is dead. That Wall Street is dead. It's at its end game. The idea that now there is a new alliance that in potential that's underway in the world right now is freaking the hell out of the establishment and the British Empire, who thought we should have had our world population reduction policy underway. Prince Philip should have died already and come back as a deadly virus. And we should have had this thing in control. But those damn Russians and the Chinese, they went and gave people an opportunity to participate in something great. And we got to stop this. And that's the intention right now. So when you have the fact that when Trump, the newly elected president, was elected into office, you know, and despite whatever disagreements came about before, the turning point when the global shift took place and you had the vote to reject the austerity policies in Europe with the Brexit vote, you had the vote in the United States to say, okay, if Trump is going to call Hillary Clinton and Obama out on the fact that they do not want to push forth the first measure for an economic recovery, Glass-Steagall banking reorganization, and they want to continue to back up the financial interest of Wall Street and Goldman Sachs and the money interests. If Hillary Clinton is going to continue to say that China and Russia are worst enemies and we have to go to war with them, then the American people recognize the insanity of this and they acted against it. And they're going to, and they have to be demanded, the American people do, that they're going to hold the newly elected president's feet to the fire, that he is going to do as he said. He's going to create economic cooperation with China and Russia, where, as we've seen with the dialogue that's already been created, that potential is greatly there. He called for the development or reinstatement of Glass-Steagall banking reorganization during the last phases of his campaign. We are now on an emergency national mobilization in these next 2 weeks leading up to the inauguration of the newly elected President Trump. And this being launched by the LaRouche movement is taking off throughout the country right now, where you have various institutions around the nation, including the Ohio members of the Ohio Democratic establishment, of the Illinois state establishment. You have others, the state legislatures. We have activists going into Washington, D.C. this week, next week. We have the newest Hamiltonian, and I think there'll be another one coming out soon after this, Take Action Now, Enact Glass-Steagall and LaRouche's 4 Laws, which we will have in the Congress and in the state legislature, including here in Texas, where we have a deployment going to the Texas State Legislature opening up this Tuesday with its inauguration. 4 laws to save the United States, not an option, immediate necessity. So we're providing people with the marching orders and the understanding of what it's going to take to bring the United States into this global alliance of economic productivity, while the so-called intelligence community in the United States and those opposing economic progress wants to put your focus on more absurd things, such as the fact that the report that came out from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, a report called, quote, Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in the Recent U.S. Election. And this is the report that the intelligence department community, Clapper, John Brennan, he has a lot of clout there to talk. These are the people who promoted weapons of mass destruction. And when it was reported in Fox News in an interview with Assange, what's his first name? Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, that there was a complete 100% assurity that Russia had nothing to do with the hacking of the U.S. elections. Well, Mr. Brennan came out and said, well, we are with 100% assurity that they did have something to do with it, and they are directly involved in the hacking of the Russian elections, of the U.S. elections, and that, well, even though you might say, well, how can we trust you? Because Brennan, this is Brennan, and I'm paraphrasing here. Basically, how can you might say, how can we trust you when you didn't have your story straight on weapons of mass destruction? Well, that's okay. We might have been wrong on WMDs, but we're not wrong on this. We know the Russians hacked us. So, sure. Well, this is some of what they put out that's been reported in their findings, which were conveniently leaked to the media and has been picked up across the board. I think the media found out about it even before the newly elected president did.
Anybody said about anything about the NSA not verifying that? They see everything that goes across the internet, period, everything. I would think it'd be very easy for them to verify.
That's one of the points.
They didn't verify it.
They haven't verified it. To me, it's garbage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just having fun telling you about this, and then I'll get into some real stuff in a second. So it is garbage, but this is what you're being, this is what the distraction is in the population from what we really should be focusing on. So hold on. So the report, one second. Okay, here we go. So the ODNI devoted several pages to RT and its influence on the election. So this is Russia Today talking about this Office of the Director of National Intelligence release, and they quote saying, quote, by serving as a platform for Kremlin messaging to Russia and international audiences, the report claims, quote, Russian media made increasingly favorable comments about President-elect Trump as the 2016 U.S. general and primary election campaigns progressed, while constantly offering negative coverage of Secretary Clinton, end quote. Goes on to say that RT's pro-Trump campaign began in 2016 by, quote, consistently, end quote, casting Trump, quote, as the target of unfair coverage from traditional U.S. media outlets, end quote, that were, quote, subservient to a corrupt political establishment, end quote. And I'll spare you the rest because the media said that they weren't giving, the Russian media said that the U.S. establishment wasn't giving Trump a fair chance and so forth, and then they were promoting him, and they said something bad about Hillary, and they hacked our election. So now, let me move on to.
Can I just interject one thing?
Sure.
There was a report done by some liberal guy that I think Brian or Ron sat around. They did a poll. You know, do you believe Russia or do you believe Obama? And it's like 83% believes in Russia, and 17% believe Obama. I mean, it's.
Well, just because we lied to you 99 times doesn't mean we won't lie to you 100 times.
Yeah.
We're telling the truth this time.
I'm sorry. That's something that's like,
Yeah.
There's an interesting kind of a picture sitting there. If you put it all together, it's like you got, somehow or other, it's like they got some student and what I call the CSA, Central Stupidity Agency, actually stood up and said that, like, evil Russians have hacked Fort Helga-Zepp out of the presidency. It kept your face straight. I couldn't keep my face straight and say that. Nonetheless, Borka comes out on the air. So I'm going to exact vengeance against the evil Russians for hacking Fort Helga-Zepp out of the president. He just threatened to do something like Pearl Harbor and 9/11 to the Russians, and declared himself to be the prime suspect for anything bad that ever happens in Russia right now. Within a space of 2 weeks, you have like a Russian ambassador shot in the back, and you have an airplane with the crown jewels on board, like the Alexander Choir goes down the Black Sea, right? Fourth figures of Bonga, right? Yeah. There's, geez, I got to do something. I got to think of something else to after I could do so nobody thinks I'm the person responsible for this shit, So what does he do? He sits there and expels 40 Russian diplomats. Everybody expected Putin to do the same thing. Putin, now we're a Christian nation. We have this shit like that, right? He invites the American diplomats to their children's Christmas festivities in the Kremlin. If there's a way for an American president to be made to look worse or stupider than that, I couldn't tell anybody what it would be. How long do you have to wait before he starts running around naked and biting?
That's exactly it. And this is why LaRouche is promoting, a return. We need a return to sanity in this nation. And I'm glad you just brought up just the genius. First of all, that was a genius of the Russian president Putin to respond to Obama in a human way, to not get caught in his trap. Because he was trying to create a trap, Obama was, it. And the fact that, first of all, I think it is important to make note that at the time where it's our Christmas, as Ted just brought up, first of all, today is Russian Orthodox Christmas. And I want to report on a very beautiful event that happened today, which our organization with the Schiller Institute was directly involved in, because what Ted was just bringing up on what happened on Christmas, this past Christmas, of the Russian plane that actually got the Russian plane that crashed, and 95 people on this plane.
Yeah, this was the crown jewel. It's not just 95 ordinary people.
I understand. I'm about to say that, but and it was, and yeah, I'm about to say that, but I want to it was the crown jewel, and Helga's message that she put out just the day following or so this plane crash that took out the Russian Alexandrov chorus, which is known as the Red Army chorus in Russia, really demonstrates, as you just said, that this was the crown jewel, because what this chorus represented for the last 20, 30 years has been a uniting of people around the highest quality of a human identity, of the beauty of music. And they sang in many different languages, not just Russian. They went to many different countries. This Alexandrov chorus actually represented a characteristic that music can unify all human beings, no matter what the differences of language are, that the language of music was a universal language. And I want to, first of all, read a little bit of the section from Helga-Zepp LaRouche, the chairwoman of the Schiller Institute, sent a letter of condolences directly after this tragedy happened to the Russian people and to the Russian consulate. And then following that, I want to play, well, first of all, I will say that with this letter of condolence that we delivered directly to the Russian embassy in New York, we had a grouping of members of our Schiller Institute chorus to sing outside the consul of the Russian Federation on December 30th. And that singing of the Russian national anthem has now taken off and has become gone global, worldwide, in terms of the responses. This was actually put on RT, Russia Today, other media sources. I believe there's over 500,000 views of our chorus singing the Russian national anthem very beautifully. And as a result of that, when it took off and after people received Helga's message, we were called, our New York organization, to participate in a very beautiful and profound event today at the Teardrop Memorial, 9/11 Memorial, that was contributed to the United States by the Russians after the attacks of 9/11, of the Trade Tower attacks. And I wish I had one here with me, but we have a picture of the Teardrop Memorial from our poster that we had, that when on the 15th anniversary of 9/11, we used that imagery in our poster as we promoted or actually had four choral performances of the Mozart Requiem. But many people know about that. But this recent development is at a whole nother level, and you will see from what just happened at this event. I have about a 10-minute clip, but let me just read this from Mrs. LaRouche first. She says, "In the name of the International Schiller Institute, I wish to express deep condolences for the loss of the 92 human beings who died in the plane crash on the way to Syria. The accident is all the more a cause for sadness, as the music and the patriotic spirit characteristic of the members of the Alexandrov ensemble would have brought a message of hope to the people of Syria. This is a population victimized by more than 5 years of the criminal policies of regime change and treated as the pawns in a geopolitical game in complete violation of their sovereignty. The Alexandrov ensemble has been an expression of the highest moral values of Russia, and like classical choral singing in general, speaks to the soul and to the creative potential of the audience. It is therefore extremely important that Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced that he is initiating audiences to pick up the best talents to fully restore the Alexandrov chorus. The training of the singing voice is important for everybody, since a well-placed voice can express the creative intention of the composer and directly speak to the same faculty in the audience. It represents, therefore, an irreplaceable element of the harmonious development of the character. Let me therefore share with you the idea that in addition to rebuilding the Alexandrov ensemble, thousands of Alexandrov choruses be established in schools all over Russia to honor the heroic contributions of Russia in the liberation of Syria, and at the same time broaden the uplifting effect of choral singing to the young generation. And I'll just leave it at that, because that is what we brought about in terms of the unity of human existence that really has to be fought for at this time, and is the essential cause for what it is that's going to bring about a true common aims for mankind. And today, the Schiller Institute Chorus, along with Terry Strada, the leader of the 9/11 Families for Justice, and others, came together with members of the Russian community to pay tribute to these great gems and to what they represented for moving mankind forward and for unifying mankind against the wishes of this oligarchy to separate and to bring nations into put nations at odds with each other. So let's see this quickly here.
Right. Okay.
You will be moved. It's a teardrop memorial. There was a blizzard happening. As this was going on.
It's a strong wind. It's not a blizzard.
You see all that snow?
Sorry for happening. As good gracious God, we love mankind. We give all transgressions to the right and worthy of God. Voluntarily, we do. There is no end to you.
So is that the Schiller choir that was singing?
We currently the world of reality. You are the resurrection, the life, and the repose. We departed servants of Christ our God. Thank you, glory, God, the eternal Father. Holy grace, life, and spirit, now and ever, and forever. Amen. Blessed repose, God, eternal rest, the Lord, and the servant. Make the heavens be eternal, and Thank you, Father. At this time, I'll ask you to retire the colors, and I want to thank you to the people department, ceremonial color guards that may own, fire department, lot guards, the American Legion, color guard. Thank you very much. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the first deputy permanent representative of the Russian Federation of the United States, Mr. Peter Helga-Zepp.
Everybody, we gather today for the victims of this last speaking there from Brooklyn 154 that happened 2 weeks ago. We came together for commemorate 92 messages, including members of one famous example and academic example of Song the prominent humanitarian worker and charity doctor in the meantime. Teams of Russian civilian generals, airway is that going to be as well as go to all sorts of prayers are going to the prayer of the weekends. The seniors, dancers, doctors, pilots and stewards live their lives to the campus, especially at the campus who used to cheer on each other after they still turn. Today is also the Christmas Day. We share life, we exchange support, we praise each other. We take each other as a big one family. And it's very symbolic that today we gather to grieve, take up of grief. And it's very deep, and I really people from them. On behalf of the permanent mission of the Russian Federation of the United Nations, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you present here, to all of this event. It's helpful when you're reading and you're not alone, you're around for your better compassion, a couple of solidarity, very much your sympathy and your solidarity. Except that when the words fail, music speaks. Arts and culture are meant to bring peace to people. So once again, I'm very grateful for insurance report for what they've done and for all of you.
When words fail, music speaks.
And thank you so much, Mr. Helga-Zepp. I'd now like to introduce the chairwoman of the 9/11 Families United for Justice Against Terror, Ms. Terry Stroud.
Hello, thank you for having me. 15 years ago, I lost my husband Tom in the September 11 terrorist attack against our nation. Today, on behalf of everyone standing here and the American people, I would like to offer my sincere and heartfelt condolences for the sudden, tragic, and senseless death of your beloved Alexander Pizarro, your loved ones, and your fellow citizens. Rich in history and pride, the Alexander Pizarro ultimate spirit under the flag of defending the Warsaw Pact. And under President Founder continued that tradition of patriotic purpose. Your performances will provide a moral balance in difficult times, and on December 25th, they were traveling to Syria to lift the spirits of the Russian army during their time away from home. Everyone here knows your pain, how deep your sorrow goes, and the feeling that you may drown in your own tears. Grief like this is both physical and heartbreaking, and feeling is long and difficult. Allow yourself to mourn, to cry, and to be sad. Remember those you loved and lost. Remember the beautiful music they made, how it felt in your hearts when you heard their songs and the sound of their beautiful instruments. They were a gift from God, and they are gone too soon. I am standing here today to tell you and to show you. You will heal. You will never forget, but you will heal. And one day the pain, your feelings, horrible pain, will subside. You will always miss them, and they will always be with you. Tragedies like this bring a nation together. Today is bringing two nations together. And I hope you find comfort in knowing we feel your pain and mourn your loss too. Russia wanted us, the American people, to have a memorial for the fallen heroes and the citizens lost and killed on 9/11, a teardrop representing that the world cried with us. Thank you for your support. Today we offer you the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strada. And I'd like to introduce from the training unit of the Bayonne Fire Department, Captain Don Piper. On behalf of the Bayonne Fire Department, the City of Bayonne, the State of New Jersey, and the United States of America, we wish to convey our deepest condolences to the people of Russia and the families that have been affected by this terrible tragedy. The loss of the members of the Alexander Ensemble, a gem of Russian culture, also known as the Red Army Chorus, will be felt worldwide. Being here at the Teardrop Memorial is fitting, since the creator of this monument was the Russian sculptor Goran Verstell. In the darkness after 9/11, this monument helped to bring hope and light to many people who visited here. It's now our turn to repay that kindness back to Russia. This small token of our sympathy, hopefully, will bring a touch of hope and light back to the Russian people. On a personal level, I'm honored to be here today, as I was actually at Ground Zero working with my brother firemen for a few days. And may the peace and hope that I feel when I am here be conveyed back to your country. It is at times like this that we are neither Americans nor Russians, but we are human beings who feel lost and genuinely wish peace and happiness to one another. Our love and prayers are with you, and peace to all. Thank you. Thank you, Captain Hyber. As the captain mentioned, one of the reasons that we are here is not only is it the 9/11 memorial, but also we are commemorating those lost on Christmas Day in that terrible plane crash. As a representative of the New York City Police Department, we too performed with the Russian choir at the 10th anniversary of 9/11 that was being held in Quebec City. And it was a wonderful performance that night. But as Mr. Ilichuk said, sometimes the words fail, but the music never fails. And even though we spoke two different languages, we spoke the universal language of music.
Is this memorial in New Jersey? Where is it located?
This memorial is in Bayonne, New Jersey.
Bayonne.
Yes, like right.
Right on the line or the
Yes,
border?
right on the-
You can see it from the 9/11, ground zero.
You can see it,
Okay.
and you can see it from some parts of
Yeah,
New York.
now look across the bay.
Right, it's up across the water.
Okay, so the Russians have other well-known choirs, and orchestras, singing ensembles, like the none which have this international repertoire.
Not
Okay,
that I know of.
the Alexandrov, you've got the Chatnitsky choir and the Kuban State Cossack choir, right? You should probably, I could send you some information about those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll probably be seeing one or two or three of those kinds of choirs, ensembles for the next few years until they can get the Alexandrov choir rebuilt.
And rebuilding it, it's not just for Russia, it's for the entire nation, the
Correct.
entire world, to build up a chorus of all peoples.
Right. The Tu-154
to
is
see.
an airplane known for reliability, right? I mean, it's very unusual to have something like that crash on takeoff. I mean, this was within a mile of where it took off. He usually got either sets icing or shoulder firing anti-aircraft missile, the type of spreading them.
Yeah, I will right now for the honor, and I'm not going to speculate. The Russians aren't making any speculations on somebody did this intentionally or not. I will let them figure it out what happened. I think the point is that was a great tragedy and loss, not just for the Russian people, but for all people, because we're really talking about the beauty of human nature, the creativity of the contributions of mankind to advancing that which is beautiful. And we have to get more people to do that. So that, we're not going to talk about foul play or anything like that. So, but now I want to take sort of a dramatic shift, not so much dramatic, because I think what we just looked at really gets at the core of LaRouche's economics. And one second here. There we go. I'm blind. Okay. So a lot of you have seen on many occasions that we've continued to promote the 4 laws to save the United States that Mr. LaRouche put out, that is continuing to be the defining point for what our nation has to take up immediately as the principles for reviving not only a U.S. economic productivity and economy that actually puts an end to the Wall Street speculation, derivatives, and the policies which have been dominating the country for far too long, but really capturing what it is going to take to bring the United States into this global alliance. And what I want to focus on today is a few of the conceptions that have been at the foundation of Lyndon LaRouche's economics, his understanding of economics, and what he's termed really the science of physical economy. And so, and these conceptions that I'm going to take actually come from a elementary educational work, as some might call it, mathematical economics, textbook on elementary mathematical economics, which he titled, "So You Wish to Learn All About Economics." And I think as we continue to move to make this the 2017, the year of Lyndon LaRouche's ideas, we have to get a little bit more grounded. And what I'm going to get into today is just going to be a little bit of a flavor of what Mr. LaRouche laid out in principle in this book. This book, LaRouche himself did a series of about 5 class sessions that are found in a publication, in a video that he published back in 1984 called The Power of Reason, The Power of Labor. And that can be found on the LaRouche PAC website under the title of On LaRouche's Discovery in the section about LaRouche, which I would encourage people to take a look at, because you will see Lyndon LaRouche out in the population giving discourses and educationals on the real economics. And just as the 4 laws really has to be seen in the context of a 1, and many people know those 4 laws include the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall banking reorganization as it was first intended under President Franklin Roosevelt, coming from the tradition of Alexander Hamilton, and the development of secondly, the return to a top-down, thoroughly defined national banking system. Thirdly, the purpose of the use of a federal credit system to generate high productivity trends and improvements in employment and increases in the physical, economic productivity and standards of living of the persons per household in the United States. And finally, the development or adoption of a fusion driver crash program. So those 4 laws are governed by the principle of the creative development of mankind at the forefront of what unifies those 4 laws as a one. That it's not just enough to have a banking separation and have Glass-Steagall without an intention that your ultimate aim is to increase the productive powers of labor and the productivity of society. So as the unifying principle of those 4 laws, I'd like to read the paragraph that follows Mr. LaRouche's 4th law that brings that whole principle together. And then I'm going to go back and develop in Mr. LaRouche's history around the understanding of what defines a productive society and the work that he has put out over the course of the last several decades is really centered around this very conception. Quote, the essential distinction of man from all lower forms of life, hence in practice, is that it presents the means for the perfection of the specifically affirmative aims and needs of human individual and social life. Therefore, the subject of man in the process of creation as an affirmative identification of an affirmative statement of an absolute state of nature is a permanent form of expression. Is a permitted form of expression. Principles of nature are either only affirmation or they could not be affirmatively stated among civilized human beings. So let's look at that for a moment here. We're going to look at that as Mr. LaRouche did in the beginnings of the studies of his works on economics, where he took a very simple conception of a biblical conception of the identity of really encapsulating this conception of man in the image of the Creator from chapter 1 of Genesis, verse 28. It says, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue the earth. So we're going to actually develop I lost all markers here. What does it mean to be fruitful? Is that one?
I don't know if it works.
Sure, it's not a permanent marker. Okay.
No, it's the way.
Okay. Okay.
In case you want to.
Yeah, you remember that one too. Oh. You just wrote that thing over there. Well, I'm going to keep coming back over here, so.
Okay.
You have to, we can we have to put it away where you can see both.
Prince Philip wouldn't be happy with that?
No.
No, he doesn't want to see fruitful. So this is the basis of the question of what is economics. And so now some people might have some thoughts or ideas on that, but I'm gonna go through a couple of more points here and maybe get some thoughts from you on your thinking on this matter. So one thing is you're going to have a productive society that actually fosters the creativity and the advancements in the productive powers of labor of every human being, then what does it actually take to do that? And, well, does your Economics 101 microeconomics actually do the job? Probably not. Does reading the Wall Street Journal's report or on what are the market statistics for the day do the job? Probably not. Is it a certain conception of the potential of mankind to make new discoveries, which really lie at the foundation of this idea to be truthful, partly to be fruitful? And that's something to really think about, because we look at where we are right now, as I was saying before, in the United States economy and the transatlantic financial system, that the understanding of economics today and what we're taught in our educational system and what people have been bombarded with is that economics is based on how much money you have, how rich you can get quickly, how you can actually create new statistical metrics and mechanisms that don't have any kind of real value to them whatsoever. But if some guy can sit on Wall Street and calculate some numbers in the computer and tweak numbers and say the markets are up or the markets are down, this is supposed to actually demonstrate some real existence of value in society. So the question is, to be fruitful, we have to actually come to understand what is real economic value and what is the measurement of economic value. And this is something that Mr. LaRouche even describes has to go a little bit deeper than just certain levels of superficial understanding of economics that are in the current trends of economics. But you have to look at it from the standpoint of how has society progressed over the course of the history of mankind? How do we move from the development of being a hunting and gathering society, which can only sustain a certain level of population, to a society of increasing into the coal wood burning, to coal production, to mining, to the advent of petroleum, oil and gas, to the development of fission and potential for a fusion powered society? How can you sustain a level of population greater with the increases in technological improvements that you would not be able to if you had not had those technological improvements? And this Mr. LaRouche really looks at some of the discoveries and breakthroughs that came about in the development of the 15th century Renaissance. How was it that we moved through some of the greatest breakthroughs and discoveries in classical development of society that actually increased the potential for a increased production of the numbers of people that could be sustained on the planet? Well, you had an increase in technological improvements. You had new discoveries being made. The works and the contributions that were made by the greatest genius and scientific minds, such as Gottfried Leibniz, who LaRouche really looks to, and the world, in particularly in Europe. Leibniz, the German economist and German economist and scientist, who wrote the first paper on what he titled Economics and Society, defined.
Leibniz invented the DYD, the exponential calculus.
Calculus, yeah, he did the calculus as well. But his first paper Leibniz was from Gottfried Leibniz was from 1646 to 1716. So
You're saying his life, that was his lifespan?
Lifespan, yeah.
Yeah.
I was spelling wrong. That's an E in the middle of that. That was the name of the writing.
Is there a T in there for Leibniz or not?
No.
Oh.
No.
The German Z is like TS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Society and Economy was the name of the writing. And in this writing, as well as some of the developments of his other scientific contributions, Leibniz defines the notions of power, work, and technology, and how all of these are intertwined to increase the productive levels of society. As you increase the power in society, and as you increase the technological progress of society with the development of new machine tools, new designs, the development of the steam engine power source, from going from a hunting and gathering society to the introduction of the steam engine in society. As you increase new technologies, you decrease the amount of work required. So in essence, if you have people having to work less because they can be more productive by working less, because the work that they're doing is more productive because the development of that work, say for instance, if you're plowing a field with a ox, a mule, and a plow versus plowing it with a machine tool that can actually get the work done a lot more faster, a tractor, the backhoe, so forth, then that the development of that new introduction of new technology into society helps you to do one other thing, which is that now, first of all, when you're talking about being fruitful, you're talking about, okay, well, you have a certain amount of people that can be sustained on a certain square kilometer of land area. And those people can be sustained on that certain kilometer of land area because of the resources and the productivity, what's available on the land. You know, you might have certain vegetation, certain fruits, certain things that people, animals, people can hunt, so forth. But then something comes about where you have now moved from the relative population density which is basically what can you sustain on the land area that you have for society, you know, just on what's right in front of you, human beings, no fancy machinery. It's yeah, it's pretty fixed. To now with the now with the introduction of new technologies, the progression of new discoveries that have been made in society, it increases the potential that you can, now that you can take what might be just simple dirt and make it productive, and you can start to bring more people onto that land area or to expand that land area, that now you're able to actually sustain a greater amount of population. So now you go into potential relative population density. What is the potential with the introduction of new technology that you will be able to sustain more people versus what you would do without the advent of these new technologies? And you increase that by increases in relative population density. Relative potential population density. Yes, got to get that right. Okay, potential and increases are important phrases in that term.
Question, Keisha. When
Sure.
we use the word relative, then we're talking about the current static, sort of fixed area.
Relative to the area.
Okay, relative to the fixed circumstances, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Antarctica is different than Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
because
a
you
good
can't.
example.
Yes,
So
you can grow in the same relative to where you are.
Where you are, right?
Yes.
Could be the relative technology that also determines it, or the food, or the whatever.
Because you can't grow the same things on the same
Right.
plot of land everywhere. Everywhere is not the same productive as it would be.
So potential means the future ability, which is unlimited, or at least it's created a new manifold for the new technology, with the new technology.
Yes, the potential is that, I think that's the right word, the future ability. What has not come to be, or been, what we have not yet discovered, which is going to bring about the future potential of the increases in population density, the increases in new technologies which have not yet been discovered and which have not yet been seen, but which are already having an effect on the fruitfulness and the productivity of society even before it's been discovered, which is interesting to think about, because the space program, because you think think about it. We can, as we did with the Apollo mission, increase our relative potential population density by acting to prepare society to make new discoveries which have not yet been created. So the idea that what we were doing by preparing society and promoting a national mission to go to the moon was to prepare us to increase our fruitfulness and productive capabilities of society, in which the preparation for that and the new technologies that were developed around this mission to the moon, although we didn't go to the moon till 1969 of July, everything that was done to get us to that point was increasing the productivity of society with the development of new technologies, the sciences that had to go into it, the building of new machinery, the development of steel, of all kinds of spin-off technologies that happened both before and after we actually went to the moon. Because you had to have, how do we get to Saturn V?
Right. Did LPAC or Liz and LaRouche have anything to do with the moon missions?
What do you mean by the question?
Did Linda and LaRouche or the LaRouche group have anything to do with the thinking behind the moon missions or with any of the technologies that were developed,
The movement wasn't around then, it was just starting. Do you mean in the 60s? It was just starting?
Yeah.
The movement was just starting.
Okay.
But
in the late 60s.
No.
He was a bit of the shit.
Because basically, LaRouche
That's
started
very
this
true.
organization after Kennedy was killed. Yeah,
Mhm.
basically, that's what it started. We realized somebody had to do something.
But people who were involved in that, as Joel was just saying, such as Kraft Erica, who helped to develop the Centaur rocket and other capabilities that actually got us to
They
the
had to
moon.
get digital computers up to a certain level before they could go after the moon and Mars, right?
Yeah, you didn't have to have those breakthroughs, definitely.
But don't forget, the computers that we use to get to the moon fit inside the metal box in your pocket
Yeah, I know.
right now. I mean, that's come a long way. The computers that we had were, well, when Giant Glenn was being shot into space, he wanted Catherine to check the figures because he didn't trust what was coming out of the IBM machine.
Or what?
Meaning, yeah, the computers were the human mind. They trusted the mind and those individuals, such as what we know today as the women and men, the mathematicians or the computers that actually did the calculations.
Still had memory.
Yes, he did.
Well, I think the thing here is to look at the power of the human mind as the key resource we've got.
Right.
And what Lynn is getting at with these measures of economy, outside particular things you've built, the question is more the mind that was able to see a conflict or see kind of a dichotomy, and then the mind solves that dichotomy.
Where problems might arise to be able to solve.
So you think about these standard paradox, yeah.
Right.
And then you solve it at a higher level. So the question here on relative potential population density, if you look at all the area on the Earth, which presently is mankind is spread in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of the tundra and that situation. There's a massive potential in terms of farming the seas, but we have no capability right now with cheap energy to apply. If we get fusion, we totally transform those. We can create whole areas that open up, even on the Earth, not in space, but especially in space. So the question here, I think, is these levels of thought of what human beings are capable of, the breakthroughs of the single individuals, and there's a real breakthrough the way Lynn thinks about this. When you're looking at these technologies that transform everything, So where do those breakthroughs come from but creative people? So Lynn's always made the center of this application of economics creativity. And he uniquely, even beyond Leibniz, he locates it in this creativity of mankind as the higher process that's developing all this. So rather than getting to this particular or that, I think if you look at the way he approaches the subject, that economics is really that application of the human mind to higher and higher and higher capabilities, which creates this relative potential population density.
He wants there to be a connection between economics and the physical world.
Well, that's where the actual test and development take place. The two, the mind and the universe, actually have a harmony, and you're transforming creativity in a creative manner to create the creation you already live in.
Right. You know, so the measure of what is the value of human productivity in society. Again, the question is, what does it mean to be fruitful? And the value, as Ron was just saying, is not measured in monetary terms or something that is necessarily tangible in the sense of a thing per se, but it is that thing being created by a mind making a discovery, and that discovery advancing the productivity of society. So, and this is exactly what I wanted to take up just quickly here. I think I have a copy. Oh, I put some copies right here. Here. Okay, let's look at this for a second. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We have a copy of it. This is a very fun, you can take a few of these besides the back, writing by Gottfried Leibniz, as I was stating earlier, on society and economy. And this has been translated from the German. So Leibniz writes about the establishment of society, about the increases in manufacturing, new technologies in society, and the organizational structure, which I find is most appropriate to what actually develops the potential for a truly creative mind. You know, how do you organize society where the increases in your labor force is going to be driven by the ability that new technologies and new discoveries is going to lead to not idle minds, but more productive minds that are going to be more productive in society, that are going to work together as a human unit to actually create and to foster a better society overall, all around. And so this is quite fun how, you know, he takes the idea behind let me read the whole thing, so I just want to see where I want to start from here. Remember, I had highlighted a couple of things on mine. Okay, so if we go to the back page, the second page, page 13. He talks about in the first full sentence, the journeyman. You guys see that?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we'll start with that because he's talking about the artisan and the journeyman, and basically those working together in a manufacturer, what do you call it? Working together in a factory, and those who are producing the goods, producing the skilled labor for society. How how they should be working to increase the productivity of society. So he says, the journeymen will work together, joyously vying with one another in the public factories. The masters themselves take care of the work that requires more understanding. Actually, Louise, you want to read this?
Okay, starting at no master.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No master need be annoyed that an intelligent journeyman might desire to become a master himself. For how does this harm the master? Journeyman's room, board, and necessities will be provided free to all workers. No master will need to worry about how he is to provide for his children or marry them off respectably. The education of children will be taken care of by society. Parents shall be relieved of the task of educating their own children. All children, while they are small, shall be rigorously brought up by women in public facilities. By women, interesting. And scrupulous attention will be paid that they do not become overcrowded, are kept clean, and that no diseases arise. How could anyone live more happily than that? Artisans will work together happily in the company's large rooms, singing and conversing, except for those whose work requires more concentration. So delightful. Do you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
Most of the work will be done in the morning. Pains will be taken to provide for pleasures other than drinking. For example, discussions of their craft and the telling of all sorts of funny stories, whereby they must be provided with something to quench their thirst, such as acida. Acida? Acida? What is it?
Sounds like vinegar.
People say, okay, there is no greater pleasure for a thoughtful man, or indeed for any man once he becomes accustomed, than being in a company where pleasant and useful things are being discussed. And thus, every group, including the artisans, should have someone to write down any useful remarks that may be made. But the society's highest rule shall be to foster true love and trustfulness among its members, and not to express anything irritating, scornful, or insulting to others. Indeed, even rulers should eschew, do you say eschew or eschew?
Eschew.
Eschew all insults unless nothing else is effective. Since such behavior precludes the establishment of trust. No man shall be derided for a mistake, even if it be a serious one. Rather, he should be gently admonished in a brotherly way, and at the same time immediately and appropriately punished. Punishment shall consist in increased and heavier work, such as making a master like a journeyman, or a journeyman like an apprentice.
That's good.
Should I continue?
No, we're good. I will. And then toward the end, he says, lies will also be punished.
But that would wreck our whole political system.
Punish the how daring. So, but I mean, obviously, you take it in terms of the principles there, that you're talking about the organization of society being on that which is going to make people happier. So this very short paper, which he goes on to develop in other forms, was Leibniz's introduction to what the United States established around the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness, and how you organize a society, that the intention of economics, the intention of society, is to actually make your population more fruitful. That the idea of economic value, of multiplying, replenishing, and subduing the earth, being the starting point for a real economy, really has to start with a society that gives value to the fostering the creativity of each and every one of its members of society, but really looks to its future, really looks to the increases in the relative potential population density of society, to what is going to be the offerings for your youth, the youth of the nation, to participate in something even more profound and something even greater. And that's why you look at how what in the course of the recent few weeks here, where China what they just did in releasing the last year of their developments around the 2016 space program, their developments in the space development, and the release of a white paper that they just put out on the inalienable rights of man to develop. It really should be understood by this idea of their intention to make society more fruitful. And the thing about it is, their intention is not to make China more fruitful at the cause of making another nation less fruitful, but that all nations working together for this common aim of mankind can actually be fruitful, and the increases in the potential for, or should we say, their understanding that if a society, as LaRouche in his economics continues to define, halts technological progress and economic productivity, a society cannot be fruitful. That once you have a society that goes with the zero growth metric status, that we're going to halt productivity, as we've seen in the United States, in the transatlantic system for a very long time. The fact that we are not at the level that we should be at in terms of what the developments around the adoption of a fusion economy, the developments of breakthroughs and new technologies. We've seen some advancements, but they're not at the level that they should be. And so what happens when you have a society that doesn't work together, where your labor, your skilled labor, is being pitted against each other, where they've been taken away the opportunity, the opportunity has been taken away, that those who have a skill to offer for the advancements in the productive capabilities of society don't have access to do that any longer. Then when you have more people who turn to drugs, who turn to alcohol, who turn to that which is destructive to the creative faculties of the human mind, what happens? You get an increase in the mortality rate. You have a decrease in the potential to sustain a greater level of population. And so then when you have a society that is operating at a fixed technological mode, the tendency, as Mr. LaRouche describes in his understanding of economics, and which is absolutely true, becomes depletion. And then you have the effect that's brought about because of that is a decrease in the numbers of people you're able to sustain in the population, a decrease in what you're producing, but an increase not in the profits and in the creative profits as well as the wealth profits, of the society as a whole, but you have a increase in the cost of living of society. Because if you're not producing more, then, for instance, the cost of food, you can't pay your farmers enough. The farmers are producing, but the society is not taking care of them, then they can't produce what they need to. So you go to the grocery store, you buy the food off, in the grocery store, and you're saying, well, why is the cost going up so high? Why does it cost me $3 for a carton of eggs? Why is the cost of commodities going up so high? Well, the price goes up when you actually don't have a society that's organized, that they're going to take care of those who are most essential to the improvements and the functioning of society. So this is what we're talking about here is you have to get to fundamentals. And some of this is basic from the standpoint of what's most important in life. Is it important that we try to keep up with the economic trends of just monetary policy as a value of wealth in society? Or do we really look at the value of wealth being the increase in fruitfulness of society by, if you have a society that's well fed, that's well educated, that if you are putting more attention on making sure your teachers get paid and are taken care of, than you are that someone who can throw a ball through a hoop is getting millions of dollars, then you're actually, serious about your society. Yeah.
I mean, what you're talking about is having economics apply to the physical world in such a way as to, produce increases in economic output, right, or in productive output.
Yes.
So that there would be something to which these theories actually correspond to. And this is what I tell people about mathematics, right? That anything which lives in the realm of mathematics is only as real as there is anything in the real world to which it corresponds, right? In other words, a negative number corresponds to the reverse gear in a car, right? Fractions correspond, correspond to the invention of knives, right? If you have like 2/3, before you have knives, you couldn't split a pie into 3 parts or 4 parts. You talk about 2/3 of a pie or 4/5 of a pie or anything. You understand what I mean?
Before you had knives, I could stick my hand.
They didn't have pies.
But you've got a question on whether something corresponds to anything in the real world, right? I mean, negative numbers actually correspond to certain kinds of things which turn up in the solution to differential equations, but
Well, it doesn't correspond to something
imaginary numbers
in the mind.
Yeah. All right. Now, something that only corresponds to something in a person's mind is basically, it's a language construct. I mean, if I say a cat or a dog, well, yeah, there are cats and there are dogs in the world. But if I say unicorn, there's nothing in the real world that corresponds to that. That's just,
Well, that which is in the mind has to be actually communicated to the society.
So sitting and thinking about unicorns doesn't do anything productive, right? I mean, that's
okay. you went.
all right.
I don't know about the unicorns, but
Well, what you're saying, the question,
but I get what you're saying.
what's primary is the universe and man's continued discovery of that. The mathematics is just a language expressing that. So the physics, the new knowledge, the poetry, the real development is what's real. And then like language.
So you want economics to correspond to physical reality, right?
Yeah, and that's it. So this fake money system doesn't correspond to physical reality, that unless you produce some food, people aren't going to eat. That's like what you're saying, you know, unless you actually increase the productivity of society with more technological advancements, society is going to deplete.
And we talked about having like $2 billion worth of derivatives out there in the world. That doesn't really correspond to anything.
Mm-hmm. Nothing real.
Right.
Right. So there's a lot more we could go through, and I think I gave a germ of a conception here, because what I'd like to do is sort of use this as a teaser to one, that we really do have to get at the foundation of the thinking of Lyndon LaRouche, because nations around the world understood the importance of that. In the 1990s, when LaRouche was traveling to the Soviet Union, Russia, and around the world, people, particularly in Russia and the Soviet Union, were studying very thoroughly Mr. LaRouche's economics. That when we talk about the fight for Glass-Steagall, which is the first step to really ensuring a productive economy, because you remove the obstacles that Wall Street placed in the way to making your society more productive, that there's a real grounding that's understood by really what I developed in terms of man and the creative nature of mankind, that economics being established around what does it mean to be fruitful? How do you actually replenish the earth? And this is what the people around the limits to growth fight of Foster, Meadows, and Forrester, they, you know, you have people today in the education systems that still talk about, well, there's only a fixed amount of resources, a fixed amount of land area, and a fixed amount of people that can be sustained. Well, we've proven that wrong already. That after the breakout in the population increases at the development at the core of the 15th century Renaissance, you had a breakout in the increase in the population with the development of the Industrial Revolution. And as you have more breakthroughs in scientific discoveries or technological progress, then your abilities to grow a population, I think it was about in 1984, 85, we might have been at about 4 to 5 million people on the planet.
Billion, right.
Billion, not million. Yeah, billion. Right. 4 to 5 billion people on the planet. And we're at 2016, take around 7 billion. So there has been certain breakthroughs in society that you've seen at points where you've had a decrease in your population, when we move backwards in those technological advancements, or we halt development and productivity. And when you don't halt it, you have a takeoff in the number of people sustained throughout the planet. I mean, a lot of that, also you look at other nations such as China. In the past 30 years, what they've developed has been almost miraculous in terms of the moving. It's almost like moving their society from basically a hunting and gathering society to a society that now is leading the planet in scientific and technological progress. And that's what we have to look at for the entire world right now. And the United States has to be educated in the real studies of economics based on this conception of human nature, which is absolutely essential to understanding how do we, one, bring the United States into this new alliance, into this new potential that has been created. And that's what we have to immediately put our energy into right now, that these 4 laws that Mr. LaRouche has laid out, that everybody is going to do everything in their power in the next, first of all, 2 weeks leading into the into the January 20th inauguration, that on the newly elected President Trump's desk, immediately Congress needs to enact Glass-Steagall, needs to pass Glass-Steagall, and have this put on the newly elected President Trump's desk to be signed into law immediately. And all the actions that Mr. LaRouche has laid on the table must follow exactly as ordered, so that we can bring the United States into a greater future and a greater potential. So again, I will say, just in terms of action orientation, one, go and study Mr. LaRouche's works. That gives you a deeper foundation and understanding into his history, in his works on economics, and study the background to his 4 laws from that standpoint. Join us in calling your Congress member next week, Wednesday. When is Wednesday's date? The 14th? This Wednesday.
Tuesday's the 10th.
Tuesday the 10th, so Wednesday's the 11th. Okay, so next Wednesday, the 11th, we will have a delegation in Washington, D.C., and we want meetings set up with as many congressional offices as you can get set up. Call your Congress member, have them, if you can't fly to Washington, D.C., tell them to meet with the delegation that's leading the groundswell in the fight across the nation to make sure that Glass-Steagall is reinstated. We are going to have already, as I stated before, some people might have missed it, that there's a very important, beautiful resolution and proposal calling for President Trump to enact Glass-Steagall as a first measure he takes when he enters into office, by certain party leaders within Ohio Democratic Party, in Illinois, in other places around the country. And we need a groundswell. And this is not something that we're trying to look at doing several months down the line. As I just said, this is not a symbolic act. We're talking about this has to be put into action, passed, and moved on, put into law immediately. And so this Tuesday here in Texas, we are going to have a delegation going to the state capitol, and as many people that can join us that are not working, I would really encourage you to do so. I can give people more details if you're watching this via live stream here. Then you can call into our office at 713-541-2907. Give us reports on letters you're writing to the editor, what you're doing to call your Congress member, if you got us a meeting set up for our delegation in Congress. And we're going to be putting pressure on the state legislators to sign letters of endorsement to get Glass-Steagall passed, as well as putting pressure on the Congress members themselves. So that's what I have. Let me go ahead and close out here, and then we can have more discussion. So thank you.